Hey, everybody, welcome to the RunDot podcast. Today, we're talking about building a run shoe rotation. How many shoes do we actually need? That is the $1 million question. So, we want to talk about this. It's going to be a fun day. And we are joined today by Coach Brady Hoover. Brady is an ACSM certified personal trainer, as well as a certified functional strength and conditioning coach, level 2, that is. And he's a Run DNA certified running gait analyst. Oh my gosh, that word always gets me. You are also an 8-time Boston Marathon finisher and you have a PR of 2:48:40. You've been a run coach since 2016, coaching both runners and triathletes. So, welcome to the show. I'm Carrie Tellefson, Olympian broadcaster and your guide to the world of RunDot. We treat this show like any good workout. We're going to start with the warm up question, settle into our main set conversation, and then wind things down by having Coach Brady answer an audience question on the cool down. Lots of good stuff today. And so, I say on my other podcast, which is called See Tolly Run, let's get after it.
This is the RunDot podcast, the running show that brings you world-class coaching with every conversation. Let's get started with today's warm-up.
Well, hey, Brady, how you doing?
I'm excellent. I'm so excited to be here and talk all things running. I just love this sport.
I know. So do I. I think we could talk about all kinds of things. But today we're talking about run shoes. So we're going to have to stay on course. But for our warm up question today, I want to know, what running shoes are you in right now? And I know you said you have a lot of them, so you might just pick one or a few more. But let's just talk about your rotation a little bit.
Oh gosh, I got too many shoes to count. So many that I think I own more pairs of just running shoes than my wife has shoes. So it's a problem. Every time I see a clearance, I'm buying it. So right now I'm kind of rotating through the New Balance Rebel V4. Love that shoe. It was just on clearance because the V5 is coming out. I just picked up a pair of the Adidas Evo SLs. Enjoying those. Adidas Supernova, New Balance Pacers. I got the carbon plate in there for the speedier days. And then for racing, if I'm doing triathlon, it's the New Balance Elite V3s. I've modified those for triathlon needs, and then the Adios Pro 4s, which I'm just loving right now. So, yeah, those are my main rotation at the moment.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot. Like, what do you have, something for every day, or do you just kind of go with the flow, how the body's feeling? How does that work?
Yeah, going with the flow and how the body's feeling. I got the like I scooped up a pair of the Adidas, and that kind of broke my running shoe rotation, the Evo SLs, the training shoe, because I
Yep.
just enjoyed them so much that every run I'm like, no, I just want, I don't want to run in these. I want to, just run in the Adidas because I just love that shoe. And then I was up at our home up in Maine, and I threw on a pair of old Rebel V4s that I had purchased back in, I think it was April 2024 when they first came out, and I forgot how much
Uh-huh.
I loved that shoe as well. So I was like, here's my answer to get back to my shoe rotation is let me
Yep.
scoop up another pair of these, which I did not need, but
Hmm.
you're a runner yourself. It's just like we
Yeah,
can't get enough shoes, especially
I
with all
know. I
the
know.
other
Yeah. Well,
components and everything.
I'm definitely a three-stripe gal. I mean, they were so good to me during my professional career. They sponsored me my entire time. And then when I got pregnant, I had couple more years, I think, on that contract. And then after that, they helped transition me to Reebok for a little bit because they were together at the time. So then I did some work for Reebok, more like an early influencer, but I was still competing and still thinking about getting back to the sport. And then after the Reebok days, I've always had Adidas sort of be that person or that company that will support me in any way. So I do wear mainly Adidas, but like you, I try to wear so many different kinds, tons of different models. And I think I've been healthier for it. So my three right now, the Adidas Bostons, I love. I love that they're so light, and they do have a little bit of arch support. So it's not like a total flat shoe. But I do like the Adizero SLs, which is a little bit more of, I guess it has a little more oomph to it. And then the Ultra Boost, excuse me. I love them as well, but they run a little short. So I have to go up in size, a half a size of those. But yeah, I'm pretty much all over the place. And I do wear other brands, when I'm at different events that are sponsored by other brands, then I'll run in those too. And I definitely think I've stayed healthier because of it.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm not partial to just New Balance and Adidas. It tends to be my go-to because I run with different run clubs and stuff, so I get a little bit of a discount, so that's where I go to. But I've run in
Yeah.
Saucony's, Asics, Hoka, quite a few pairs of Hokas. That's just
Yep.
what's on the shelf right now in my rotation currently.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the warm up question. And we want to invite the audience to definitely chime in. So check out all of our social accounts, the RunDot social accounts, and we are curious to hear what shoes are you in right now as well. So let us know on our socials.
Let's go.
All right. Are you ready for the main set?
I'm ready.
Okay. Let's do it. All right. Some runners rock all of their training and racing in one single pair of shoes. And you and I have talked about this. We sort of have that closet full of them. So when you are trying to be a successful runner, do you recommend having a number of shoes, or do you like to just have that one? And now we've sort of heard from you, but what do you recommend to your athletes?
So I definitely recommend a shoe rotation. I kind of broke my own rule when I got those Evo SLs for a couple of weeks. It was just the excitement of it, right? Motivation to train. Um,
Yeah.
but I will highly recommend because different shoes are like it's like cross training for your feet. Like each shoe, depending on its like heel toe drop, its stack height, can offer different benefits. In changes to your, not really your running gait or mechanics so much, but how your muscles, ligaments, tendons are loaded. Um,
Hmm.
Instead of doing that same repetitive motion. Every once in a while, like I'll get like a calf, a cranky calf or cranky Achilles, and then I really can't run in like a 6 millimeter drop shoe. I need to step up to an 8 or a 10 as it's going to alleviate some of that stress. So that I can still go out and do my runs. So I always recommend, some sort of shoe rotation, at least 2 pairs. Now with the introduction of super shoes, some athletes will have 3 pairs, 4 pairs. It really depends on how often you're running and what your budget is. But definitely want to consider, um, the benefits of having different shoes. Um, Shoes can be tailored to different workouts. It's also going to
Hmm.
increase the longevity of your running shoes because you're not just running in one pair of shoes all the time. If
Yeah.
I look at my kind of main 3 shoes, like the oldest pair or the pair with the most amount of miles on it right now is the Evo SL, and they're, approaching 200 miles, where my New Balance, only have about 50 miles on them. My racing shoes only have a marathon on them, so it's not like you have to replace all of them at once. If you're smart about it, you can kind of rotate your speed work shoe in, and then when you get a lot of miles on that, you're replacing that. Then you get a few more months maybe on your tempo trainers or long run shoe. So it's not like you're replacing them all the time. So I like to say it will increase the longevity of your shoe.
Yeah. So you really kind of recommend though, like 3 pairs. I mean, that's what I heard stand out the most. Like you have a lot, but you are obviously testing out things and seeing how things work for you, and maybe even thinking about your athletes while you're in these different types of shoes. But do you think 3 is kind of the ideal number?
I'd say three is a sweet spot, especially if you're running
Okay.
3 times a week. It's like I can run in a different pair of shoes every day. So,
Mhm.
we're always gonna have we're gonna have our long run. That's priority number
Yeah.
1 if we're training for something, half marathon or longer. So we have our long run. We have our long run. So you're gonna want a kind of a beefier, more padded shoe, to save those legs a little bit. Um, you're always going to have a speed work day. I call it track Tuesdays, where it's usually your faster workout of the week. It could be Mondays, it could be Wednesdays, but then you'll usually have a lighter, more responsive pair of shoes for those. Then you have your recovery run, which that could be your long run shoe or my recovery run. That's where I like to, just depends on how my feet are feeling.
Yeah.
I enjoy the Evo SL and the New Balance Rebel, as I mentioned. But like every once in a while, things will get cranky, and I need something like the Adidas Supernova that's got a 10 millimeter stack height to alleviate some of the
Mhm.
stress on my Achilles, to allow me to just like
Mhm.
go out and comfortably run. So it's good to have different weapons in there for your run and different reasons. But it's all really going to come down to like running mechanics and what's going to be right for you as well.
Yeah. And I have heard you talk a lot about the heel stack. I mean, that was never really a thing when I was racing. And because I'm still in this running world, right? And I still know enough about shoes, but I don't really just throw that how many, millimeters the heel stack is, but that's becoming a thing. Like a lot of people know how many millimeters they're running in, or if it's a zero drop or whatever.
Yeah, with the advances and the different kinds of foams out there,
Yeah.
the running shoe companies are able to increase the stack heights while keeping the weight relatively the same. Like back when I started running, running, I guess I was always a runner. I was a center mid or left midfielder, so I was a runner and I just didn't know it yet.
Yeah.
And then 2012 came and I'm like, okay, how do I stay in shape? I work so much I can't play soccer anymore, or it's just games on Saturday or Sunday kind of thing and no practice. I'm
Yeah.
like, I gotta stay in shape. So then I found out it was just enjoyed running. Um, Back then we would have, oh gosh, what did I used to run in? Um, I think they're still around today, like the New Balance 1080s, but
Mhm.
the stack height was really big, but it was heavy. Now the 1080s, the stack height still has that same stack height, but they're a lot lighter and more
Right.
comfortable. So I only do like long runs in them, and sometimes like
Mhm.
I would even feel the weight on the bottom of my foot. But then I was saying, well, the reason I'm training in these now is it's going to make race day easier when I'm running in my like racing flats, which was like a zero drop or a 2 millimeter drop shoe, probably what you
Yeah.
used to race in. New Balance, what are they, 1400s or 1500s is what I would race in, and my
Uh-huh.
feet would just be killing me at the end of a marathon. But that's what we did.
So wild. Like, we laugh about that now. Like, my husband pulled out an old pair of racing flats. I don't even know what they were. They're Adidas. And they're so thin, like the cushion underneath it. And he was thinking he was gonna wear them. I'm like, they don't wear those anymore. Like nobody wears those things anymore. Get them out of the closet. They're like 15 years old. Like they are retro, you know? Wear them with your jeans. Oh. Let's talk a little bit about that, like marketing shoes now. When you talk to any shoe rep or you go into a shoe store or you're looking online, they're talking about a lot of different things. How doesn't somebody that's kind of new into it, or even like me, someone that, I mean, I'm an Olympic athlete. I love to run, but I don't want to be talking all the technicalities of shoes all the time. I just want to get a good pair and go run in them. So, what would you tell an athlete to look for? And maybe like just in common terms, not someone that's, been in the sport for years like you have.
Yeah, so first thing when you go to buy a pair of running shoes, going to a specialty store, especially if you're new in the sport. I'm here in the New England, up in Newburyport, Massachusetts. We have Marathon Sports right here in town, and there's always an employee on staff that's in the store that can take a look at your. I'm not going to say like running. Well, they're looking at your running gait. They're not doing an analysis. They're just seeing how you move.
Yeah.
Are you pronating? Are you supinating? Are you heel striking? um, how are you pushing off the ground, and they can recommend the right pair of shoes for you.
Mhm.
And once and kind of pick their brain about it a little bit too, and say, why are you recommending this? Oh, you're pronating, so we were suggesting a stability shoe. Well, then you can go online and you can restart researching stability shoes. You can go to different manufacturers.
Yeah.
um, Somebody new starting out, I don't know if I would recommend a lower drop shoe, like a 4 millimeter drop. I might recommend, or I know I would recommend like a 6 to an 8 millimeter, because it's kind of that neutral. Whereas I don't
Yeah.
know if their calves and Achilles can handle that kind of load, especially
Mm.
depending on what they're training for. So distance, comes into mind when suggesting a pair of running shoes, and just history. If they're new to running, to go into a 4 millimeter drop shoe, it's a lot of stress, on the foot, on the Achilles, the calf. So going somewhere kind of in the middle is going to allow for some of those adaptations to take place. And then you'll know, do I need to go to a higher drop or a lower drop? So really getting a professional to look at you. I mentioned Marathon Sports, but I think, is it Roadrunner Sports? They're kind of nationwide,
Yeah.
is
Oh,
another
yeah. Fleet
specialty running
feet.
sport. Fleet
There's
Feet.
so
We talked about Millennium Running earlier. They have a
Yep.
store. So any of those specialty stores, yeah, you might pay $10 more for the pair of shoes that you get online, but you're going there for a service. I say that's crucial,
Mhm.
and especially if you're just not sure what you should be running in.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, well, first of all, pronation is when you roll in, supination is when you roll out. A neutral shoe, there's cushion, there's stability shoe. All that's kind of what when I sold shoes, that's what we talked about. Are you a pronator? Are you supinator? Do you want more cushion? Do you need more, do you need more of a shoe that doesn't move? Do you want a flexible shoe? Now it is. They're going to talk to you about what the heel is doing in a shoe before you even get in the shoe. So that's something that we should, I guess, learn. Get with the times, peeps. Like I need to get with the times to talk about the heel stack.
Yes. And they're
So
very good, like, they deal with, like, a lot of novice runners there starting out, so
yeah, yeah.
a lot of the terms that I maybe threw out there might fly over some people's heads, but they're really gonna, bring it down, and, you could even ask a running coach that has, some sort of background in gait analysis, and they can take a look, and I love when my runners come to me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about a new pair of shoes, I'm gonna replace my." If I suggest the Rebel before, I kind of want to try a different brand. Great. I'm going to find I'm going to go across the board. I'm going to find a Hoka that fits that family. I'm going to find an A6 shoe that fits that family, a Skechers. I'm going to go right down the line. I love it when I get asked that question. Maybe spend too much time doing it because I could geek out on this all
Yes.
day.
Did you ever work in a running shoe store?
I didn't. No.
Oh, they are missing out. They needed you.
I love to learn.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and that's the thing. I think as you go through this sport, you really do learn a lot about your body and what your feet do on the run. It's not necessarily what they do when you're out walking or when you're just standing around. Like your feet do weird things when they're trying to keep you up and you're trying to propel you forward. So you do have to sort of test it out. I love that some of the running shoe stores will allow you to take the shoes home, go for a run or two, and if they do not feel right, bring them back in because they want you healthy. They don't want you getting hurt in their shoes. So, I know that a lot of the shoes in Minnesota will do that, or the shoe stores in Minnesota will do that.
Yeah,
Okay,
a lot
so
of running company shoes will do that. Roadrunner Sports, Marathon Sports, they have
yeah,
like a 30-day guarantee. I mean, assuming that you don't put a ton of miles in them and really beat them up, you do a couple runs and then you say,
mm,
"Yeah, I'm not really liking this." They won't necessarily refund your credit card, but they're going to give you a store credit if you paid $150 for that shoe. They're going to give you a
yeah,
credit of $150 towards another shoe. So it's just
uh-huh.
awesome. They really stand behind their fit.
Okay. Well, I'm going to dig into this a little bit more because you've kind of like gone over a lot of things, but I want to kind of reiterate some of the things that we've talked about already. So forgive me if I ask a couple things over and over again, but you're teaching me here. So I might ask the same question twice. But how do you know as a coach, how do you advise, and even as an athlete yourself, how do you know which pair to grab when you're heading out on a run? Like a lot of times right now, I am not doing a lot of training that is geared towards anything. I'm actually, just getting out the door and trying to find a different loop or, just kind of going through the motions and having some fun with my running right now. There's not a lot of structure to it. So I don't think it really necessarily matters to me. However, I do think it's important for me to continue to mix up my shoes. I have just stayed healthy with it. So I'm going to keep doing that. But what do you recommend to your athletes as they decide which shoe to wear if they are, one to buy multiple pairs of shoes?
Yeah, so it depends, like, what's the purpose of the workout that they're doing that day? Is it a speed work? Is it track Tuesdays? They're gonna want something that's, lighter weight, that's more responsive, that has a good cushion. If they're on a longer run, their tempo run, long run, maybe something that's got a little bit higher of a stack height, a little bit more padding under the foot. It really depends on those couple of things. If we're talking like a two shoe rotation,
Mhm.
um, I think the sweet spot's really 3, but, it depends, I'm training for a
Yeah.
marathon, right? So I have 3 shoes. I'm gonna put a ton of miles on those shoes, where other runners, they might be just training for 5Ks. I would recommend, 2 shoe rotation there,
Mhm.
unless they have something that they wanna race in as well, then that's that 3rd pair of shoes, but I wouldn't really count that as part of the rotation if you will.
Yeah. And if they go for an evening walk or something like that, because some people train twice a day. Some people don't, but they add in their mileage from walking at night or they're taking their dogs or whatever out on a walk. Do you recommend going in that pair of running shoes or do you, like me, save some of my last season running shoes, and then that's where I kind of play in. I go out and play wiffle ball in them, or I go to a game in them, but I still feel like I can still be in them and they're not going to hurt me. So what do you say? Would you say tell an athlete who kind of has a walk in the evening and put them in their running shoes or have a totally different pair?
Oh, have a totally different pair of shoes for walking. It could be like those
Okay.
old, I'll typically
Mhm.
put about 300 to 500 miles on a pair of shoes.
Running, you'll run 3 to
Right.
500 in a pair of shoes? Okay.
And that's, through a rotation. So it usually takes me 4 or 6 months to get through that many miles on one
Mhm.
pair of shoes. Um, After I've put that many miles on a pair of shoes, I'll go out and, yeah, walk in them, hike in them. They become my yard shoe, things
Yeah.
like that. If they were going to be, say um, and I would do 2 workouts a day. I would do my say Tuesday, I'd be on the track in the morning, and then I'd have a slow run in the evening. So maybe it was an hour hard workout in the morning, 40 minutes slow and easy. That's not walking in the afternoon. I'd be putting on a different pair of shoes. I'd be putting on my long run pair of shoes for that slow recovery run. So I don't need that responsive light trainer that's got a little bit less cushion. Like I want my legs to feel good. I want to,
Yeah.
finish that run and feel like I didn't even really go for another run. You feel
Yeah.
fresh.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's times where I'm like, "Why are my knees kinda achy?" Or, "Why am I a little bit, not feeling as springy?" And it is funny how sometimes you put on a pair of shoes, a new pair, and you're like, "Well, there we go. That's why." Maybe they just broke down a little bit quicker, or I don't know. Do you think that the
Yep.
temperature of what we're running in affects our shoes? Like, do they wear out more in the summer than they do in the winter or vice versa?
Yeah, great question. You alluded to a couple of different things. What was that first
I
point
know,
you made?
I'm all over the place. I just am thinking and thinking and thinking. I just say it all at
Yeah,
once.
no, oh yeah, I call them the phantom pains, right? You're out for a
Yeah.
run and you're like, "Wow, I'm feeling this little twinge like just under my kneecap. This is so strange. Oh, I know when I felt this before. It's usually when my shoes are approaching
Yeah.
300 miles. And then open up my Strava, and I use Strava just for, all my stuff goes there, but I'm only using it really to track my shoes. And I look at my Strava and I go, oh gosh, I have 280 miles on these shoes. Ah, no
Yeah. They're
wonder. Okay,
getting
use these
yeah, getting
short
old.
runs, 300. It's time to replace this, speed work,
Mhm.
this more lightweight, responsive shoe and replace it. It's funny how our body can give us like those little signs. I say, listen for those little, or as Matt Summer says, listen for the little whispers before your body yells. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that is just
true.
such great advice. So I highly recommend, tracking your miles. Garmin has a tracker on there. I just found the Strava one more seamless. It's like I open up my thing and then it asks me a couple of, the workout pops up and I can just select the pair of shoes I'm running in. And then every time I log a run, I know how many miles are on that pair of shoes. Sometimes I don't look at the mileage, but when my body tells me those phantom aches that you mentioned,
Yeah.
it's usually approaching 500 miles. I found with the new foams out there, I'm not getting as many miles before I need to replace them. Um, because the foams are much lighter, they break down a little quicker. But I'm also
Mm.
pretty hard on my shoes. Some people might be a little bit not so hard on their shoes. So they might be able to push their mileage a little bit longer. Uh, and then you mentioned the shoes breaking
Uh,
down. Definitely in the
yeah.
summer, in the heat and humidity, and actually, different heats and humidity can break down those foams a little bit quicker.
Brady, how long did you say, a shoe lasts on the shelf?
Oh, they
What's
say
the
up to
shelf life?
3 years from the manufacturer date, and then others will say
Okay.
6 months. So I say, your best bet is, think about a year from the manufacturer date, the year they get on that shelf.
Okay.
Um, you'll want to run those miles in, and we'll get into that a little bit later, I think.
I mean, I have shoes in my basement, Brady, that are probably 5 years old because sometimes I get shoes from places that, you know, have given us a pair and I just haven't got to them. So do you say not to run in those then if they are past 1 to 3 years old?
Oh, great. That's a great question. So not necessarily don't run in them, right? They're still a brand new sneaker. But just don't expect them to last, the 3 to 500 miles. Really listen,
Okay.
look at those little aches and pains that you mentioned that you'll sometimes feel. And then you throw on a new pair of shoes or you grab the other pair of shoes out of your shoe rotation that have less miles on them. And you're like, oh, that little dull ache that I felt in the bottom of my patella, it's not there. Oh, it's probably
Yeah.
time to replace that pair of shoes. Like you're just going to want to look for those little cues. You may not
Yeah.
notice that they're not as responsive, like the new phones today. They kind of compress and then expand, so they give you a little bit of a pop. Not talking about a carbon plated shoe at the moment, but um, fuel cell by New Balance. That foam compresses and it kind of springs, so they're a little bit bouncy. So you might notice. I mean, if you're in tune with that, not all runners are in tune like we are as to like how something
Uh,
feels on our foot. They're just they're kind of putting the miles. But if you're really paying attention to those things, um, those are some things that you'll notice that, oh, the first time I put these shoes on, I remember them being really responsive, really kind of propelling me forward, and I'm
mm.
not really feeling it so much. Um, if the pairs of shoes have been sitting in the basement for 5 years, well, you might notice that after 150 miles rather than 300.
Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on? I mean, I we've been talking about you being in a lot of Adidas and in New Balance recently. Sounds like you've tried out Asics and all the brands too. But what do you say to athletes that really are like, nope, I am a three stripe gal, or nope, I am all about the Asics shoes or Brooks or whoever it is? Like, do you tell people to think outside the box, or are you okay with them liking a certain brand, but they definitely need to kind of, I think, go with the times and see what how the models have changed over the years.
Yeah, so every brand, I mean, the shoe manufacturers are so good nowadays that they have
Mhm.
pretty much every style of shoe. They're all competing amongst one another. That you don't have to necessarily have different brands or
Mhm.
be loyal to a specific brand. You can kind of spread yourself out. Some people, I have a kosher runner that he's just got wide feet, so New Balance is all that works with them because they have like the in the box it might be size 11E, right? That E represents it's a really wide toe box, and that's what this runner needs. So whereas Asics is known for like their arch support and really having a nice tight fit, through your arches and the center part of your foot. So some manufacturers have those little kind of I'm gonna say quirks, but they're not really quirks. They're just like things that are specific. But if you do like running and say, I know triathletes and they only want to run in Hokas, right? There's nothing wrong with running in two different pairs of Hokas, right? Because each one,
Right.
when you're shopping around, you want to consider, okay, this one's a little bit lighter weight. There's not as much cushion under the foot. This is going to be my speed work shoe. Maybe it's a 6 millimeter drop between heel and toe. Not We're not talking stack height. We're talking about the pitch of the shoe from where your heel sits to where your foot sits. Uh, that's different. That's a little bit different than say stack height of how much
Yep.
under the foot. Uh, so then you could go with another pair of say Hokas that are 10 millimeter. Um, heel toe offset. That's going to alleviate a little bit of stress on the Achilles and calves. I say it's always nice to have something with a little higher heel toe offset to have in that rotation, because if you're running, if you're if they just a runner, right, and you're running 4 to 5 times a week, at some point your calves, your Achilles are going to get a little cranky. It's nice to have another tool in your toolbox to kind of
Mhm.
pull into that rotation and switch things up. And it may not be your shoe preferred. Like I like as close to a 4 millimeter drop as I can get. Um,
Mhm.
Nice on those long runs or those recovery runs to have something where my muscles, my tendons, my ligaments aren't stressed in that way, like the Achilles calf area as they would be in say a lower stack height shoe or a lower stack height heel toe drop shoe. So things to
It's
consider.
all these things.
There's so many nuances, I know.
We are such runner nerds, Brady. It's
Oh,
crazy. I love it. I really do. So if an athlete though, okay, you've been talking about all these different kinds and how we both have these different kinds, but if an athlete really only has a budget for one type of shoe, one that they would race in, do the workouts in, do those long runs in, do those easy runs, what would you recommend? Is this even like a question that I dare ask? Because it is a hard one to answer.
it is a very hard one to answer. But
Mhm.
some people are don't have the budget for two pairs of shoes, and that is totally fine. We're telling you the benefits of having at least two pairs in the shoe rotation. But if you can only have
Mhm.
one, um, that can kind of do it all. Something that's going to have a good amount of foam that you can take on long run, so like a decent size stack height. Something that has maybe a 6 millimeter to an 8 millimeter drop. Obviously, you want to have as someone an employee in a store that we mentioned earlier, Millennium Running, Marathon Sports, Roadrunner Sports, like look at your gait mechanics to be really recommend because maybe you can't go in something like a. I always like to recommend like the Nova Blast. I think it's it. Yeah, the Nova Blast 4, which is a great shoe that can kind of do it all. It's very lightweight. It's a comfortable trainer. It's got a good stack height. The foam's light. It compresses. You could race in it. It's light enough that you could
Mhm.
race in. It's not a stability shoe, but we call it stability neutral because it's got a wide enough base that it is relatively stable. The New Balance Rebel 4 also is one of those shoes, though the Rebel 4 has a lower heel toe offset. Uh, so definitely things to consider if you can only get one pair of shoes that does it all. That it
Mm.
has some, enough of a stack height and foam underneath to really compress and save the legs. That it's light enough that you can race in and do those fast workouts in. There's nothing wrong with that for sure.
It's fascinating. Though, a couple last questions though. First, this is a silly one, but I need a clean shoe. Do you ever wash your shoes?
I don't, but I have a pair of shoes that I won't go out in the rain with. Um, so that they're a cleaner pair of shoes or my race shoes, right? Well, I'll race in those in the rain, but
Yeah.
those racing shoes, if I need that clean shoe, well, there it is.
See, I wash my shoes all the time. I don't dry them, but I will wash them. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I definitely will throw them in the wash, on a lights or, like low spin cycle or whatever you say, and get them clean. So
Yeah,
sorry, coach.
well,
I go against your logic. I wash my shoes, peeps.
yeah,
And
yeah,
also
Teutons no
spray on
stinking.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I just put them in the wash. I take my Nels Falfa, or however you say that bar. It's like Scandinavian bar of soap that gets all of the stains you could ever imagine in life, anything you can think of. And I use that on the muddy parts of my shoe and I scrub it, throw it in the wash for just a little bit and I air dry them and voila, they're perfect.
Nice.
Yeah. But
Love it.
maybe it's not the best thing for the foam. So I'm not trying to say I know what I'm
Yeah,
doing either.
it's not break it down, but so can't the rain and the dirt, especially for running in
Yeah.
dirt. There's salt and stuff on there. I mean, ultimately, like your body's going to tell you when it's time to replace a pair of shoes. If you're listening to it, and something doesn't
Yeah.
quite seem right. Always
Mhm.
wise when you have that question to just go throw in another pair of shoes and see if it goes away. If it does, it's time for that new pair of shoes.
Yeah, for sure. Super shoes. Let's talk a little bit about those. We talked about if someone is only going to buy one pair of shoes, and they've heard about these super shoes, like really nowadays, how much can you get in a super shoe? Like how many miles can you get in there? And also, do you really recommend super shoes for people that are racing and trying to run really fast?
Yeah, so super shoes, it's a good great question. I love them. When I run
I have
into
never
them,
raced in them that I know
they
of.
have you ever put a pair on your feet?
Yeah, but I really haven't done much work in them to see. I mean, I guess the Bostons that I'm wearing, I think I have like the Boston 13s or something. Do they have like a little bit of some kind of carbon rod, but not a full on, it's not
They
like a
could
full on racer.
have to check. They could have a
I don't
nylon
know if
plate.
I don't think it's yeah, I don't think it's a labeled a super shoe. I think it's more of a trainer, but that
Yeah.
would be as close to one as I've gotten, I think.
Yeah, so that carbon, it really, there's videos on YouTube and stuff where you can watch people kind of bend the shoe a little bit and then let go, and it's
Mm.
like a pogo stick. It just goes, and then they do a regular shoe, and it only moves forward a couple of inches, where the super shoe really pops forward. I
Wow.
remember I threw on the first pair of Nike 4%, and I
Mhm.
run with power. So I was like, well, let me keep all effort the same and see if this is all about the hype. And I threw on a pair of super shoes. Now I'm a midfoot striker, not a heel striker, so that can make a difference, right? You can be a heel toucher, heel striker if you're heel striking, which you're overstriding, we call it, and putting on the brakes. Yeah, hands down, don't
Mm.
get a super shoe until you work with like a ring gate specialist and address that to be more of like a heel toucher or a midfoot striker because it's actually going
Because
to
you
slow
run
you.
the risk of injury.
you're at a higher risk of injury. Another thing, I mean, there's not a ton of science out there yet on the super shoes, but I was talking to Bobby McGee uh, about a year ago. It was February 2024, and I was picking his brain about super shoes and stuff. And he said, the one thing that they're seeing is a lot of like stress fractures on the foot, and some
Mhm.
Achilles issues with those shoes. With runners that are running in them too often. And I kind of always had this. I was like, okay, well, carbon, it's doing some of the work that my foot otherwise would. And with my strength and conditioning background, I kind of thought, I'm running in these shoes, it's doing some of the work for me. So what's happening? Like my tendons, my ligaments are not getting the same stresses they otherwise would in another running shoe.
Mhm.
So it's not really atrophying, but in a way, um, those tendons and ligaments are getting less strong, if you will, and opening up the athlete to some sort of stress fracture or something like that. That's what like the early data is telling us. Um, and then if somebody is also running them too often, it kind of shifts that load. So rather than the load being really at say the Achilles area, that load's got to go somewhere. It's up towards the hip and in the femur, which is great, right? Those muscles are stronger, but also if somebody's running in them too often, well, that's something that their mechanics are also not used to. So that's opening up them to an overuse injury up in that area. So it's like you got to be careful with them. They're super shoes. They're great right out of the box. They're not something that you really have to break in. I would recommend doing like a long if you're racing a marathon, like getting a 16-mile run in them, to get a feel for them, and then kind of putting them away until race week. And then, on two of your short runs, like those speedier runs, if you will, where we're kind of progressing to race pace, like using those right before the race. And then if you have, this is just my personal advice. Then if you've running them, say in the last 30 days, you really don't need that break-in or getting used to,
Right.
like, your body's pretty familiar with it, maybe just one of those runs, because 'cause you're spending a lot of money there, 200 to $300 unless you go with, like, the new Adidas ones, which I think are around $500. Those ones, I think, break down after 50 miles, because of the
Oh.
horse they use, so it's like you really don't wanna put a ton of miles in them and really save them for those races.
Yeah.
Yeah, running them just enough to be comfortable and used to them and remember how they work, um,
Mhm.
but not really running in them once a week for your speed days or anything like that.
Yeah.
If it's been, 2 months time, yeah, break them out for one workout just to remember how they feel and then put them away, till you're closer to your race. I just don't want to see I see runners get hurt and I don't like to see that because that means, eventually they might think about leaving the sport and it's like, well, they were just in the wrong shoe and we could have solved this problem or the mechanics, they could have changed
Yeah.
slightly and that kept them in this sport. So super shoe, I say it's a last resort. Definitely, if you're a heel striker, they're out because a heel striker, you're striking the ground and you're putting on the brakes. And like I mentioned before, it's changing the lever system, so that stress has to go somewhere. So it's actually going up into the hip, which is already a cause for an increase in injury if you're overstriding like that. Then you throw on a super shoe on top of that, and it just kind of magnifies what's going on.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear that everyone kind of has to like test them a little bit to see because, even at the elite side, when I'm doing all the commentary, there are athletes that come up to me and they're like, they've either had to figure out and they're lucky a lot of times the brands will help them. They'll put an upper on a different bottom or, upper versus lower, all these they can kind of make shoes for them that are legal. But also there are some athletes like an Emily Sisson that took a long time to figure out what shoe worked for her with New Balance. Like she didn't do the super shoes for many years. I think she's slowly getting into them, but she's had to figure out how to do that to stay healthy and also to react to the super shoe. Some people, what do they call them? Super reactors or, non reactors. So it is interesting. So the super shoe again is the carbon plated shoe that is all the rage now. And anyone that's in them is usually setting these new records. And, the whole sport has changed because of them.
Yeah, and I noticed a couple things when I threw them on, and I did that test like early on when the 4% first came out, and I noticed I can't tell you the exact numbers anymore, but that was several years ago. but I noticed that my stride length did increase at the same effort. Um, I
Mhm.
think I guessed it at I think it was a 6:50. That was my marathon pace at the time. So I went out marathon pace in my New Balance 1400s. Um, and that was maybe 275 watts, let's say. Then I threw the, stride power meter on the 4%. Um, and at that same effort, I was doing I'm going to say a 644 or 643 at the same effort. And I noticed that my stride length increased, but also my vertical oscillation went from like 7 centimeters to 9 centimeters. Keeping all effort the same. So yeah, they are faster. If if your mechanics allow you to run in them, they're very pricey. So again,
Yeah.
don't go to the bank. Do they give you a little? They give you a little bit of race day edge. As one of my athletes said, oh yeah, it helped it when he first ran his first half marathon. And he said, oh, it hid my bonk pretty well because they do want to propel you forward. But I say that's like a last resort. It's not your one pair of shoes that you train in all the time. It's like that pair of shoes that you put away and you only break out for races and every now and again.
So if you're almost to the age of 50 and you still want to run really fast and break your PRs and you haven't run in a super shoe, do you say there's still a chance to set a new
There's
PR in the super shoe?
Yes, there's still a chance. Get a pair. I mean, they are
Okay.
just evolving so much. And each brand has their own, kind of make of them. I think the latest, like, kind of that look out of this world are the Puma Nitros. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they are. They reminded me when I put those on at Boston this year to just kind of try them out because I was curious about them. It was like I threw on my first pair of super shoes all over again. I was like, "Oh my gosh, there's
Huh.
like these things weigh 6 ounces," I think the weight was, and I stood in them and I felt like my wife in high heels. And my one question to the sales rep, and of course he can't answer this, I said, "I see an issue here. If somebody's a heel toucher, meaning like they're not overstriding, but they're touching and they're rolling into the ball of their foot, they throw on a pair of the Puma Nitros, my fear was that they're gonna be a midfoot striker. Well, they haven't conditioned their muscles
Sure.
do this, so that's, where somebody could
Mhm.
get into an overuse injury. So, just things to think
Mhm.
about as going around for shoes. And they didn't I
Yeah.
said, "You guys come out with a trainer that's similar to this so that an athlete can train in it. If they're a heel toucher, I'm lucky enough to be a midfoot striker, so no problem. But if I was a heel toucher, I would no longer touch, so I wouldn't recommend that shoe to just everybody."
Yeah. I definitely think you need to try. There's a pair I need to go and look now at the Adidas pair that I wore when I ran my last marathon. They might have been an early super shoe that I just wasn't paying much attention to, but my calves for the first time, I've never had my calves go crazy on the at the end of a marathon before, and they really did. And now that could have been hydration or fueling, all the things, right? Not necessarily the shoe. But yeah, I think you're so spot on that we have to try all the different pairs and even look at underneath what the shoe is actually doing. I know there's a number of brands that have sort of wide space in between the toes and in between your arch and the toe. And I know Paula Radcliffe has even had to figure out which pair of Nike ones she's going to wear because her toe, she's got an issue with one of her toes. It's actually why she had to stop running competitively. But one of the pairs really bothered that. So, like, yeah, you just all have to try shoes and run specialty shoe stores are the best place to do it. You can't just look online and read about it and be like, "Oh, that's the pair for me." You really have to go try them on.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, you mentioned the rubber on the bottom. That's where, like, in their shoe studies, these companies have done, kind of wear testing. Where do most athletes wear out the shoe? That's where we want to keep the
Mhm.
rubber, and we want to remove it, say, from the inside of the heel. We're going to remove it, and it's not even going to be there because the athletes that are running in the shoe that it's designed for, that part of their foot's not even touching the ground. So, like, we can reduce the weight of the shoe, right? It's all about the weight now, by removing this
Yep.
piece of the rubber. Because it doesn't really need to be there because the athletes aren't wearing on there. So very important to, yeah, have somebody look at your run mechanics to make that recommendation if you're new to the sport and kind of don't really know what shoe should I be running in. Super helpful
Mm.
to grasp a professional's opinion on that.
Well, super thankful for all the knowledge that you have for it. And I'm really excited for your upcoming season. It looks like you're going after some big goals and obviously always thinking about the little things they say, right? Like it's the training is the hard part. And that's what we, spend so much time thinking about and doing, but it's the little things. And when you think of a pair of shoes, that's really not such a little thing. It's a big thing. And we need to make sure we're fueling our body properly, not just with food and hydration, but also with the gear that we have on. So, thank you for all of that.
Yeah, the important part is getting through the training. When people say, my first Boston, I remember being interviewed by the news. Are you nervous to run 26.2 miles? I was like, no, this is the finish line. Like the hard work was the hundreds of miles that
Uh,
I put in to get to this point and stay healthy.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
that is the real part of the sport is getting to that starting line healthy. So, a good pair of shoes, the
Awesome.
right pair of shoes, a good rotation is the way to go.
All right. You ready for the cool down?
Absolutely. Let's do this. Let's see what the audience has for a question today.
Okay. This one's coming all the way from Colorado. And Julie has asked if you've missed multiple training runs, should you just jump back in as if nothing has been missed? Or should you do a new time trial to reset your training?
That is a whole can of worms. Okay, so it depends,
Ah,
right? I'm gonna say it
okay.
depends. How much training are we talking? Are we talking like I was just sick for a couple of days and I missed 3 days of training and I'm getting back into it? Or, I went rogue and went on vacation and traveled abroad and I missed a month of training. You know, that that would that would have a different answer. So I'll kind of go over that. If it's just a couple of days, chances are you could probably get right back into it. Um, like you haven't missed a beat. I wouldn't go crazy trying to make up workouts because it was just a couple of days, right? If you're training for a half marathon, missing 2 or 3 workouts in a row is just like a small dip in the big bucket of all the miles that you're doing to train for the race. So it's not going to have a huge detrimental impact. Um, your body will tell you go out for a run and, an easy, you know, start off like if you in the warm up, um, your body's pushing back a little bit and you're trying to do your speed workout, chances are it's probably not the day for it. Just, go for the duration. Like to say that the training plan and the hours that we're putting in, the duration of the training, even if we're going zone two, running easy for every single workout, it's going to get us to that finish line. The intensity is going to get us there faster. So your body's going to be, the big determination there. Um, if it's been say a week, chances are you could probably jump right back into the training at the same intensity, but again, like listen to the body. Maybe you're set up for, it's been a week and you're set up for 4 by 1 mile repeats at your 5K pace. Go for that first repeat. If the body pushes back, say, well, four is probably not a good idea. I'm gonna try, I think I can do one more. And if one more kind of depletes you, um, stop there. You're right. Now, if it's been a month or something like that, that's where you really gotta probably consult with somebody to say this. My last long run was 20 miles, and now my next my or say sorry say my last long run was 16 miles, and now my training plan is telling me to run 22 a month later. Should I go out and run that 22? Chances are not. You're gonna probably need someone to help you bridge the gap to ramp you back up to that point. Um, our body can only handle so much stress at a time. If you're training on RunDot, typically it's a 3 week build, and 3 week where the intensity or the volume or a combination of both increases each week, somewhere between 10 and 20% each week. That's either intensity, volume, or a combination of both, and then we deload. So when you're getting back on track, those are things to say, okay, where do we left off? Where do we need to start? And we can only really add 10, save 10 to 15%, and kind of ramp up that way to get back to it. So yeah, it's kind of a can of worms depending on how much training was missed. But if it's, just a couple of days or a week, I wouldn't sweat it too much. If it's, even 2 weeks, yeah, you're probably gonna have to start
Wow.
off a little easy, maybe pull back the long run mileage a little bit. But if it's been 3 weeks or more, that's where it might be best to consult with, a
Yeah.
coach or a professional. that could advise you how to get back on the track. So, like I said, I don't want to see anyone get injured in this sport.
Thanks for listening to the RunDot podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on your listening platform of choice. For more opportunities to learn from our coaches, check out our YouTube channel and follow RunDot Training on social. Ready to train with us? Head to rundot.com and get started for free. Until next time, happy training.